I think a lot of times we obviously confuse comfort with peace. And it begs the question, what is peace really? And there's a couple answers that you can give, and probably the primarily, significant answer would be a lack of stress, a lack of, I guess, difficult things that are in the way, forcing us to not be at peace. And you're probably maybe imagining a beach house or a beautiful place to live in nature, surrounded by family and friends, whatever it may be. And while I do agree that these things do equate to peace, I don't think it's the sort of foundation that we can really rely on. And if we want to feel peace, if we want to regulate our nervous system in real time every day, we have to learn to bring that sense of peace into our everyday life. There's, of course, changes that we can make to make our life feel, in a way, easier and more enjoyable. But for the most part, it's about bringing peace into our life rather than seeking peace out of the chaos of our life. How can we bring a sense of stability and structural relaxing into the chaos of our everyday? I do think there's a couple things at play here, and obviously the title speaks volumes. Avoiding things doesn't give you peace. If anything, it actually robs you of your peace because when we avoid things that make us uncomfortable, when we avoid things that, inconvenience us, then what we do is we lower our ability and our capability to experience those things. So the less you experienced those discomforts, the less you experience things that inconvenience you, the less you are prone to do those things. And the less you are prone to do those things, the more anxiety sort of starts to creep in and create a foundation instead of peace. What peace looks like is continually doing difficult things, even when we don't want to, because we understand there's a larger picture and there's something greater at play. I mean, it's the very case of, why, if we're going to prioritize comfort in our life, why wouldn't you just sit at home all day and watch TV on the couch? Because you need to make money. And making money often requires you to inconvenience yourself, to work more than you would maybe comfortably like to. In whatever fashion that may be, you obviously can make a different career where you're making that work more enjoyable, but that's a different conversation. If we're talking about peace, regulating our nervous system, and feeling more at ease in life, it's not necessarily going to be completely found in changing the structure of our life, though it can be. And for many of you, it's probably not going to be the big shift in, you know, in terms of like a material way, but rather it's going to be a relationship with discomfort. And because those decisions are made from two different places. If you're dealing with a lot of anxiety, and if your anxiety is directly tied to an external result or factor, that's a little bit different than a lingering anxiety that is kind of built into your day-to-day life. But the main thesis of what I'm getting at here is that life is going to require certain things from you, right? Life is going to require you to do things that you don't want to do for a greater and bigger picture. And I think a big part of growing up, and especially maybe for those of you who are listening who are on the younger side, is that there's going to be times where you don't want to do things, but you do them because it's the right thing to do, or you do them because you're helping someone else. And that's part of growing up too. And that's where I think anxiety and comfort start to affect every part of our life. Because when we allow anxiety and sticking to our comfort zone to play such a big role, suddenly it's not that we don't want to do things for other people, it's that we don't even have the capacity to push ourselves past the inconvenience and past the discomfort to actually do it. We're valuing comfort and ease of life over anything else. And I'm speaking from experience here. And a lot of us do it, and we're not doing it consciously. And a lot of times we don't know that we're doing it. We're doing it because it makes sense logically, right? Logically, it makes sense. If you have food, water, and a place to live, a safe place to live, why would you do anything extra? Why would you go the extra mile? Shouldn't you just be satisfied, chilling all the time and everything like that? And that's where, the logical thing is not the inherently right thing to do, because then there's a caveat. Oh, but how are you going to sustain that? And then you could say, oh, well, I'll just, work just enough to afford this and that. And then you say, okay, well, how are you going to have a social life? And you say, oh, I'll do just enough to keep in touch with people. And you're seeing that anxiety and your comfort zone will make a negotiation with you that as long as you do just enough to maintain certain things, that you can just continue to exist in that comfort zone. But what that logic won't tell you is that the anxiety starts to get worse if you don't push yourself, if you don't actively invite challenge, if you don't actively invite growth, if you don't sit through the discomfort of that anxiety, whatever, however it may be, or in whatever way it may appear, then yeah, it's going to get worse because now you are feeding it. It's exactly what it is. I would imagine the comfort zone as a literal area, a surface area, and you can imagine it maybe even as your room or your home. Imagine the most comfortable place you have. And while it's so nice to have that thing and it can stabilize us and ground us when we're going through a lot or whatever it may be, if we cling to that place, even that place will be polluted by our mind because when we cling to that comfort zone, it starts to become attacked by that anxiety. So this is what we do, right? We expand our tolerance. We move through life in a way where we are overcoming certain discomforts. We are sitting through certain discomforts. We are inconveniencing ourselves. We are doing difficult things. And so it starts to become easier to find comfort in various situations. You expand your tolerance for life and you give life a bigger pool, a bigger, I guess, area, span of area. I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say here. You give life a bigger surface area to provide you comfort. So if you do the same thing every day, then your realm of comfort exists within that routine, right? So anything that falls out of that routine is going to stress you out. Anything that falls out of that routine is going to give you anxiety because you're clinging to that routine for your sense of peace rather than clinging to a mental fortitude, rather than clinging to a self-belief in yourself that you can overcome whatever's in front of you. We have to place the comfort zone inside of ourselves. Our comfort zone should be the very fact that we can regulate our emotion, that we can regulate our nervous system. Our comfort zone should be the fact that we've shown ourselves time and time again that we can go through these experiences and come out the other end. And if you haven't shown yourself or you don't feel like you've shown yourself the proof, then spoiler alert, you will come out the other end because even if it's uncomfortable, it eventually ends because it's temporary. When you look at the big picture, this is the only right way to go about it. When you look at the small picture, comfort, anxiety can become very convincing and can seem extremely logical. And I want to recommend something that I've found extremely effective, and that is before there's obviously big things in your mind that I guess trigger you in a way, but also don't be afraid to attack those little things. The little avoidant behaviors in your life, don't be afraid to attack those because those start to add up. And so if it's, paying for something at a register and your voice is a little, I don't know, raspy or whatever because you're not projecting yourself, maybe don't be afraid to speak a little bit louder than normal. Don't be afraid to be seen. Don't be afraid to be seen saying whatever you're going to say. I think another thing that the comfort zone does is that it keeps us very private and it keeps us very, you know, attached to our solitude. And solitude is a good tool, but it's almost as if we're looking for solitude, we're looking for escape whenever we're not in solitude. That's what happens with too much isolation, is that eventually you're looking for the comfort of isolation even when you're not in it. And that's a problem because you should be able to go out into a crowd of people. You should be able to go out into the world and feel that same sense of peace, that same sense of comfort and relaxation as you do when you're alone in your room. And some people might say, well, of course, I'm never going to feel that same level of comfort as I do when I'm in my room. That's the epitome of comfort. And to that, I say, why not? What's stopping you from experiencing that? And you could say, oh, there's a lot more dangers in the outside world rather than my room. And that's the very problem right there, is that you're only associating peace, you're only associating comfort with your room or your home. Why not start associating peace and comfort with almost everywhere we go? Of course, there's limits to this, but why not start associating peace and comfort with being outside, with being far from home? Why not say, I can be at peace right here, right now? That's when things really begin to shift, is that when you realize you actually don't have to subscribe to these old belief systems. You actually don't have to listen to anxiety. You actually don't have to, and you aren't limited to experiencing that same amount of anxiety. And actually, as you experience going beyond your limits, experiencing discomfort more and more, that anxiety starts to go down. If someone is traveling the world for the first time, if someone goes to a country, a foreign country for the first time, they're probably going to be extremely uncomfortable, especially if they're alone. But what happens when an experienced traveler does the same thing? They probably experience a lot less stress, a lot less anxiety and worry. And it's not because the two people are inherently different. Of course, some are predisposed to feeling more anxiety, some are predisposed to feeling less. But let's say two people of absolute equal anxiety and worry levels are doing the same thing. The one who travels more is going to experience less anxiety when traveling than the one who travels less. Now apply this to absolutely everything in your life. Apply this to your day-to-day life. Apply this to the amount of conversations you're having a day. Apply this to the amount of effort you're putting into pursuing your purpose, whatever it may be. As you do it more, it takes away the shadow of the event, the shadow of the situation, the shadow of the unknown. As you experience more things that are outside of your comfort zone, you start to see that the cast of shadows really never really existed. It was just your fear. And that when we experience more, our anxiety goes down. And in my opinion, I don't see it as rocket science. I'm not saying it's particularly easy, but it is relatively simple. You have a tolerance just like you have a spice tolerance. And if you're not pushing the bounds of that tolerance, then that tolerance is going to go down. And from my perspective, I see it as I would rather be at peace and feel comfort in as many places as possible. So I'm actually going to continue to embrace discomfort. I'm actually going to continue expanding the limitations of where I can feel peace and comfort because that makes my life experience actually easier. Staying in your comfort zone all the time doesn't make your life easier. It makes those temporary present moments easier, but then it makes that next event that you have to go to much more difficult and much more emotionally devastating. Rather than if you're always doing things, that event just feels like another thing to do. Inconveniencing yourself for another person just feels like something you do. And it doesn't feel like a big deal because you do it all the time. If you're not doing things in the world, and especially now, I think this is a big problem right now because of phones, because of the internet. It makes it so much easier to stay home. It makes it so much easier to stay in your comfort zone. But I'm telling you, you're going to feel a newfound sense of confidence. You're going to find a sense of charisma and flow that you never have before simply by going and doing things. That's literally it. Just by doing things. Because when we talk about solitude, everyone's always preaching solitude, but they're not getting into the nuance of it. You're not isolating, you're not hibernating and meditating 10 hours a day. And if you are, by all means. But if you're not doing that, if you're on your phone, on TikTok, Instagram Reels, whatever it is, 6 hours a day, instead of actually going out and experiencing life, of course, it's going to make experiencing life more difficult. You don't do it. You don't practice living. The act of living is being, right? To live is to be. And if you only are in one environment, you're only going to have experience and know how to thrive in that one environment. If you push the bounds, if you go outside, you're going to learn how to thrive in those outer environments as well. That makes sense, right? So what would now be the reason? So what do we do tomorrow? That's the perfect way I like to look at it. Whenever I read anything in a book, if it's not followed by what can I do right now? What can I do tomorrow, starting tomorrow morning? Then, it's inherently feels very esoteric and distant. What you can do tomorrow morning is do something different than you've ever done. It's the simple, it's the little things. Start very small. The first person you talk to, instead of murmuring and stuttering under your voice, project yourself. Don't be afraid to be a little bit loud. Don't be afraid to be seen. Don't be afraid to be seen walking into the store to buy something. Don't be afraid at the register, speaking up and projecting yourself. It's these little things. And even if that's not something you struggle with, then place that effect and make it relevant to whatever it is that you do struggle with. What we can do starting tomorrow morning, what we can do starting today is let the world know that we're here. Say to the world, I'm here, I'm active, I'm participating. Let's see it. What opportunities do you have for me? What doors do you want to open for me? Why don't we do that? Why don't we? In the comfort zone, there's nothing new. Nothing's going to happen in the comfort zone. Nothing. Nothing new. Nothing bad's probably going to happen either. But that's the price of living. That's the non negotiables. That's the rules that are built into the game of life, into the system of life. That sometimes unfortunate experiences occur, and many times amazing experiences happen. That's how life works. So say to the world, I'm here now. I'm projecting myself. I'm talking. I'm open. Let's see what you got. What do you got for me? And chances are you're going to feel great because maybe that person who is at the register enjoys a very small, light conversation. Maybe that's the first one they've had that day. Maybe that's the first time anyone's even acknowledged them in that way the whole day. You know, that point is a little bit irrelevant to what I'm saying, but it still plays a factor. Why don't we live our life embracing the fact that we're alive? And that to be alive and to make the most of life, we do have to expand our tolerance for experiencing things that are outside of our comfort zone. So imagine there's a circle around your room, around your home, whatever it is your comfort zone. Every time, and the more you go out and expand your ability to experience discomfort and still have a foundational, relative sense of peace, you are expanding this zone of comfort wider and wider and wider. And think about it. Don't you think you speak with more confidence? Don't you think you speak with more assurance when you're comfortable? When you're in your room on the phone, you speak with probably grand confidence, with really great assurance, and with deep presence. When you're talking to someone in your home, you're probably very comfortable. You're very present. So, what if we could bring this onto the outside world and apply it to every other area of our life and see the limiting belief system, see the anxiety, see the fear that's telling you you can't? You can. You know you can. Because listening to this, it makes sense. It makes complete sense. The less things you do, you're going to be more exposed to feeling anxiety because you never do things. More things are going to cause you anxiety because you never do things. If you do a lot of things, less things cause you anxiety because you've experienced more. And not a lot is going to throw you off the rails because you know from previous history how these experiences tend to play out. You know that when you feel discomfort, if you've experienced it 100 times already this month, that it's just a breeze. It'll pass by. All you have to do is sit through it a little bit. And yeah, that first time sitting through discomfort is going to feel like hell. It's going to feel really difficult. The second time, not as much. Third time, not as much. Fourth time, not as much. That's how it works. You get better at living life by going and living. There's no other way around it. That's my experience anyway. That's it for today's episode, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to leave a link to my book in the description if you want to check that out. Other than that, if you're on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're on Spotify, thank you for listening as always. I appreciate you guys. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.